Hey, it's Leo. Welcome to my channel and my mid-month check-in for May 2022. Figured for this video I'd throw in a couple different things. I have a question for you, my viewers, as well as a unboxing to do, a couple books to talk about, and I'm gonna throw in a trapeze clip for fun as well. So thanks for watching and let's get into it. With each video, I lift up a different nonprofit that's doing good in the world. I do this to remind myself of all the people who are working to make the world a better place. I'll make a donation and I encourage you to check them out. Like, share, follow, or donate as you are inspired. With this video, I'd like to lift up Forward Doc, which is an organization of documentary filmmakers with disabilities. They believe that coming together as a community allows them to support each other and advocate for themselves with greater power. They're the group that wrote and produced Crip Camp, which is on Netflix. I watched that with a documentary film group I was in with friends towards the beginning of the pandemic, and definitely recommend it. It was really good. Forward Doc does things such as host quarterly online meetings for deaf and disabled filmmakers, build a database of deaf and disabled talent, organize accessible mentorship, create resource packs and toolkits. They recently had a press release where they demanded that the UCLA's Hollywood Diversity Report, including an analysis of deaf, disabled, and neurodiverse talent in Hollywood as well. So I will link that down below. Anyway, it sounds like a really great organization. They remind us that disability is diversity, and so I will encourage you to check them out. It's been a pretty good month so far. Haven't done as much reading as I thought I would, but I did get to see a play. I saw Comedy of Errors 2 weeks ago. A couple of my friends, shout out to Genevieve and Carl, are in the company, Canon Shakespeare Company here in Portland, Oregon. They did a really great job. Funny and engaging and really good time. I was also excited for my StreamYard debut in a karaoke night that if you haven't checked those out yet, hosted by author tubers Barrett Laurie and Margaret Pernard. I definitely recommend you check those out. That was a lot of fun and not as scary as I thought it would be. So, although I did practice quite a bit. I also collaborated with another booktuber for something that will be out later, and so you'll have to stay tuned for what that might be, but that was a lot of fun as well. Also, thank you everyone. I am like really close to 300 subscribers, but I've realized that I'm the kind of person that has said, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I almost have 300 subscribers on my YouTube channel in non-YouTube conversations. And I was in my trapeze class on Tuesday, and two of my friends said, yes, we are some of them. So thank you to Kelsey and Aaron for being subscribers. And then I mentioned it at work again. Oh, I'm incorrigible. And thank you to Dennis, my coworker, who is also a subscriber, and his brother, Richard, who also has a YouTube channel, and he is getting pretty close to 1,000 subscribers. So his is in education. His channel is called The Angry Teacher, and he shares and discusses strategies, talks about education in general. He's taught English in the public school system in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools in Miami, Florida for 18 plus years. And his recent video is 6 ways to curb off-task student behaviors. And I'm sure many of those techniques were used on me as a student. So anyway, I'm gonna link his video down below. I definitely recommend you check it out. Thank you to Dennis and Richard and Kelsey and Aaron and also Genevieve and all of you for being subscribers and commenters and viewers and being a part of this community. I just love it. Love it. Love you all. So, all right. This seemed like a good place as any to stick a trapeze clip from last week. This is the second time I'm trying a trick called octopus. The first time I completely messed up and we called it octopus tangled up in a net. Anyway, let's speed it up a little bit. I got up on the trapeze, put my legs the wrong way. All right, there I've got them the right way. Ta-da! Put my hips through. Oh, tickling my toes. I'm flying! Whee! But I'm not facing the camera. Thanks, Jack. I appreciate the assist. Da, 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 da. But now I don't know how to get out. So once again, we will speed up this little bit while I spin, waiting for help. And then, yes, this is what I do. Flip one leg out, and then the next. Cross your heels, drop under the bar, and let go of the rope. Ta-da! I did it. And then grab the bar and whoop, you're done. That was Octopus, folks. Thanks for letting me share it. Okay, let's get to the unboxing. So this is a box, my very first subscription box from Raven Reads, which my friend Karen told me about. And Raven Reads is founded on the premise of raising awareness for collective histories, lived experiences, and supporting Indigenous authors and entrepreneurs. By being a subscriber, we are helping to invest in Indigenous businesses and authors across the US and Canada. And they said they've invested over $300,000 in those communities since their inception. They also said for every new children's subscription sold this year, they're going to donate one new children's book to a national Indigenous youth summer literacy program. So anyway, this is my first box. It's quarterly, so let us see what is in it. I need a tool. All right, now I'm ready. All right, there's a little note. Thank you for your order. Curated and packaged just for me by Victoria. Has a letter from the curator. Tells what's in the box. I'm not going to open that yet because I want to discover. So here we have nice paper. We've got a card. This is called The Hunters. And it's a blank inside and has an envelope, so that's lovely. All right, here's the book, Girl Gone Missing, a Cache Black Bear Mystery by Marcy R. Rendon. 19-year-old Cache Black Bear helps law enforcement solve the mysterious disappearance of a local girl from Minnesota's Red River Valley. So that is right up my alley, so looking forward to that. Ooh. And a drawstring tote, that's very cool. And some colors. I'll have to read more what that's about. I'm realizing that with my glasses, it's hard for me to see with the light in there, so I'll have to read more details later. But anyway, that's a very exciting box. So if you are interested in something similar, I will include the link for Raven Reads down below. So I've read a few things so far this month, and the first two I'm going to talk about on my next video, which will be my shout out queer book review. So you'll have to stay tuned for that. That is going to include the short story Chicago Beauty by our own Say Kevy of BookTube, as well as Becky Chambers' A Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet. So my review of those and another arc will be in my shout out queer book review coming up next week. So that leaves two books that I want to talk to you about today. The first book I want to talk to you about is one that I put on my library hold for the audiobook as soon as I saw Emily at Nobel Novels' discussion of it on her Three Musketeers book tag, which was an original book tag by Becky at Teacup the Storyteller. So this was back in March, and it just came up ready on my library holds this week, and so I listened to it, and I'm so glad I did. The prompt that this was in response to was for a strong female character, and I found that to be definitely true. So what is the book? The book is A Curse of Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer. This is a Beauty and the Beast reimagining where our protagonist, Harper, she lives in DC. She's got a pretty rough life. Her mom is dying of cancer. Her dad has gotten involved with some shady business dealings and left, and her brother and her are left kind of trying to hold everything together. Money is definitely tight. Through a sequence of events, she gets transported to a fantasy land called Emberfall, where she meets the prince who is cursed, and that is Prince Ren. So I actually didn't realize anything about what the story going into it other than it had a strong female protagonist, and that was enough for me, and I loved it. I'm gonna give this book 5 stars. Our protagonist, Harper, is definitely strong and capable, not looking for anyone to rescue her. There's disability rep in the book. She has cerebral palsy, and she definitely speaks to that in the book. The author is not a Own Voices author, but in an interview she described a childhood friend of hers who had cerebral palsy and envisioned her as the protagonist, and they collaborated on sensitivity reading and so forth. So I can't speak to it from my Own Voices perspective, but I definitely found the character to be strong. Character spoke about her disability and how that limited her in some ways, but also just about her strength and personality and force of will. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed Harper. I thought that the character of the Prince, Ren, was really interesting, as well as his guardsman, Gray. This was, for me, it was a compulsive page turner or audio audiobook turner, and I wanted to know how it was all going to turn out. I found that the tropes were satisfying. There were some unexpected turn of events that I really appreciated. It's been out a few years. I guess there's now 3 or 4 books in the series, and I will definitely read the next one. Thank you to Emily for putting this on your tag video, because that's why I picked it up, and definitely recommend it for people looking for a fantasy romance with strong women, a little bit of queer rep, disability rep, and an interesting curse, a baddie villain, really interesting questions about what's happening to the rest of the kingdom, what are the implications of her being whisked away to this foreign land, and so forth. One other comment about the disability that I can't remember, someone else I guess had mentioned this, that they appreciated that when Harper is transported from DC to the fantasy land, her disability doesn't just disappear. She still has her same body, her same disability, and that there isn't some kind of weird healing. Anyway, I'd love to know, have you read it? What did you think? Did you also give it 5 stars, or was it not quite your cup of tea? Do you have other books that you would recommend with a strong female protagonist? I also wanted to mention that Emily at Novell Novels is also really close to 1,000 subscribers. And so if you haven't subscribed to her, go check out her channel and see if you want to be one of the ones to help her get to 1,000. I meant to have this video out a few days sooner, but I really wanted to include this next book that I'm going to talk about. I was looking on NetGalley at different ARCs that were available, and this one came up. It actually had a release date of March 17th, which was yesterday from the time I'm filming this. But I read the description and some of the brief reviews, and I just had to read it, and I had to include it in this video. And that is My Body Is Not a Prayer Request by Amy Kenny. I really love this. I also give this 5 stars, and I wound up ordering a copy for myself, and I sent a copy as a gift to a friend. Definitely I'm going to be recommending that folks read this one. On her website, Amy Kenny describes herself as a disabled scholar and Shakespeare lecturer who hates Hamlet. This book, My Body Is Not a Prayer Request, reflects her Christian background. She talks about her experiences in the church, but there's also a lot about just the world in general and living as a disabled person in the world in general. It's a brilliant book. It's funny, it's insightful, it's engaging and thought-provoking. I'm not sure if this book would only be for a Christian audience. There's so much good stuff in here, and some of that does include theological and scriptural analysis and reflection, particularly on where the church has missed the boat in being exclusionary or discriminatory towards disabled people. And so I'll leave that up to you to decide if this is a book that you might want to check out, but I definitely recommend it. At the beginning of the book, she talks about how there is still a discussion on language and either identity first or people first language. So people first language would be people with disabilities, and identity first language would be disabled people. And she uses disabled people in her book. And so that's what I will use in my review as well. For her, she uses the identity first language because she wants to shun the shame associated with the word disability. She says she's not a euphemism or a moniker. She is disabled. So again, that's what I'll use in my review. The chapters in the book cover things like talking about the remedies that people have suggested to her to cure her disability. She particularly uses a mobility device. She either uses a cane or a scooter. She talks about discrimination she has faced. She shares stories about the illegal lack of accommodations in both schools and housing, and some of the ways that people in the public or people at churches have treated her and treated her being in a wheelchair. She talks about people who doubt disabilities and insist that she prove it, that she has a disability. I really appreciate the way that she tells the stories about what has happened to her. And I found myself in one way then being, I guess I would say, reassured, like, oh, well, I haven't done anything that bad. And then she kind of goes deeper into it and says, well, but ableism is everywhere. We're all steeped into it. So even if we haven't refused her disability accommodations, we still have ableist thoughts, language, jokes, practices, etc. that are unexamined. So I really appreciated that. She also dives into disability justice and contemplating the blessings of disability. She talks about microaggressions, lessons learned about disabilities. She talks about, for example, how one of the things that disabled people know is interdependence, and worth not being on productivity, and that the ableism in our society really has us focused on how we need to always be improving ourselves, that our worth is in our productivity or in our beauty or in physical form, etc. She has really great reflections on all of that. The ways that she structured this, she also has like reflection questions at the end of each chapter. I think this would be a really great book to have discussions with in your churches and your book groups and your communities. One of the reasons why I ordered a physical copy is I tried to highlight in my e-reader, which I'm still trying to figure out how to use, and there was so much that I wanted to highlight, and the highlights weren't really working for me, and so I needed a physical copy because I'm gonna flag that book up. There's just so many places where I was like, yes, this is insightful. I never thought of that. I want to think about this more. Oh, this is a great question I want to ponder, and so forth. Let me read one of the passages for you. I have a quote. This is in reference to the way that like songs, for example, or some of our like popular theology or mythology about the afterlife. And I say mythology because I don't think it's limited to Christian mythology, but just that the afterlife, that people will be freed from their wheelchairs. She really dives into that about whether or not that language or concept is appropriate. She has this quote: "Imagining paradise without my wheelchair persuades us that heaven is so far out of reach, such a distant land of miracles where unicorns puke rainbows, that we can't get there no matter how hard we try. Never mind that we have enough food to prevent people from dying of hunger. We just don't want to share it. People who like to comfort themselves with the idea that disability does not exist in the new creation," so she's talking again about heaven, the eschaton, like after resurrection, etc. "People who like to comfort themselves with the idea that disability does not exist in new creation are centering their ableist discomfort in someone else's story. In my story, my disability is not for others to write. My body is not an empty canvas on which non-disabled people can paint their fantasies of new creation. Even if our bodies are not disabled in new creation, why does that make someone so thrilled? When we worship God, we shouldn't harm people who bear God's image. Surely we can find something to praise about the creator of the universe that doesn't erase disabled people. Worship should not create a hierarchy of who is in and who is out. Worship should not laud a utopia without your disabled neighbor." That's just one piece. There's, again, so many parts that I flagged in this that I'm going to translate and flag onto the paper copy when it comes. One of the other things that I learned, that I never learned this in school, was the American Disabilities Act, which is not that old and took a lot of fighting. I actually learned a lot about that from watching Crip Camp. But what I didn't realize is that religious institutions fought to make sure they are excluded from the ADA. So the Christian churches argued that they shouldn't have to be ADA compliant because to include churches in the ADA would be, quote, "imposing burdensome cost and needless injury to religious exercise." So churches and Christian schools in the US do not have to have curb ramps, accessible bathrooms, etc., in addition to the other accommodations that are required by law elsewhere. That just frustrates me. It really frustrates me. Yeah. She also does some really great analysis of theology and scripture study on disability. There were so many places that I thought, oh, that is really interesting. So again, that inclusion is not just ramps. The ramps are important. Other accommodations are important, but how we talk about people, do we use metaphors? Like, do we speak of ignorance as blindness? Do we think of something that we don't like as lame? These sorts of things that are both in our songs and in our language. She challenges us to think about that. Amazing Grace, that lyric can be changed. There's other songs that are common in your hymnals that how hard would it be to change one line, and by doing so not erase the image of God in the disabled neighbor in your church. So great food for thought in there. Another takeaway that I have is just a simple practical one that I'm going to implement when I put this video up, is that she talks about in accessibility making your hashtags have each separate word have a capital letter. And I'd seen that, and I'd seen them with all lowercase. And she brings up that by capitalizing the first letter of each word, it makes it so that screen readers are able to read that hashtag more easily to people who need that assisted technology. And so my hashtag Stand with Trans Kids book tag, I've been putting everywhere with all lowercase letters. And so I'm going to be changing that so that the first letter of each word is capitalized. She also has a great discussion about how we assume that assisted technologies are just the wheelchair or just this or just that, but that how this is one of the gifts of disability, and the way it opens up thinking is that it inspires innovation. And she just details a lot of things, including audiobooks, including text messages, and so forth, that originated as a way to make something more accessible, like the typewriter, like the bicycle. All of that just blew my mind. So anyway, I'll stop raving. Buy the book, read the book, share the book with your friends if you choose. And again, I give it 5 stars. The last thing I wanted to do is just mention the books that I have left that I hope that I can get to in the month of May. I almost said March. And so I still need to read The Sorcery by Terry Pratchett for the Terry Pratchett Readathon, with Katya, Rosie Cockshut, Scott at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and Say Kevy are leading. I hope to get to that. This was one of the polls in my BookTube spin, which was my first BookTube spin, so I'm going to try to get both the books read. And this is also going to work for the Asian Readathon, which is hosted by With Cindy. I still want to read Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God. This is the book for the Black Classics Book Club, hosted by Brie at Locked Booktition, and I've heard so many great things about this. This was the first book in my BookTube spin, Open Water, which many of you have raved about, and so I want to get to this. Thankfully, some of these are not super long, so hopefully I can. It's already the 18th of May. I wanted to read this one, W.E.B. Du Bois, The Souls of Black Folk. Many people have recommended it, including Hey, It's Shay. And this would also work for the May of the Moderns Readathon, hosted by Margaret Pennard. That is for books written between 1901 and 1945, which also Their Eyes Were Watching God would meet as well. And finally, also for the Asian Readathon, I'd like to read George Takei, They Called Us Enemy, which is a graphic novel about the internment of the Japanese during World War II. So I hope to get to all of those, and who knows what else. Oh, and then there's an arc that I want to read that is, that I hope to read and talk about by my next video, as I mentioned before. So that is a lot to do. I think I just won't leave the house for the next week and see what else happens. My question for those of you, especially content creators, I've been using Adobe Premiere Pro to do my editing, and I like how I can put in different audio and video tracks, and I like how I can snippet out different segments where I say etc. And I like that I have it on my computer, which is Windows. I know some of you, I know came at middle of the book march, you're able to edit yours on your phone, but my eyes are just not good enough to be able to do that. So I've been using Adobe Premiere Pro, but I do not like it so much. It keeps kind of like threatening to crash. It'll like close and then open back up, and I used to lose my work, but now at least it seems like it's saving my work. And also my colors are always washed out, and that's getting weirder and worse. And so anyway, long story short, please, if you have any recommendations for software that I can use, I have an iPhone that I then import onto my Windows computer, which is an ordeal in itself. And then I would like to be able to edit it and put in clips and music and so forth. So hit me up with your suggestions. I would love to hear it. Thanks. Anyway, I hope you're well. Thanks for watching, and I'm wishing you hope, love, joy, and courage. Bye.